How do we know what to do to show that we're right for that role? That's not the goal. That film was the film I had the most knockbacks on.
Really?
Only takes one person to say, "Oh no, I don't like that idea." Off the table, gone. And those casting directors aren't really casting directors.
What's the most common reason an otherwise talented actor gets a no from you?
What did you do that made me pay attention? How did you capture that? So many casting directors disagree with you. Yep. And so many actors don't understand you have freedom.
Welcome back to Two Unemployed Actors. I'm actor Max Belmonte. Have you ever wondered why you're getting a no, even when your tape is perfect? Today, we're sitting down with casting director Greg Apps to dismantle the myths of the audition room and find out what it actually takes to stand out in a very crowded industry.
Two unemployed actors, two unemployed actors, they're just between projects.
Welcome, Greg. Thank you for making the time to talk, directly to the acting community.
My pleasure.
And speaking of acting, can we start by talking about your experience, the evolution of Greg Apps, the actor? Because weren't you in Rocky Horror Show?
I was indeed. At a time when sort of being in the Rocky Horror Show was something very, very special, let me tell you. I actually sort of did speech training. And I did that through high school, and then I got an agent, because they asked my speech teacher. And the thing about auditions back in those days, I'm talking the early 70s. The thing about auditions in those days is it's pre-fax machine, pre-computer, pre-everything. So in fact, when you got an audition, what happened was they said, "Oh, go to the ABC at this time, and here's the address." And when you got there, they'd put audition sides in your hands, and then what you'd do is you'd do a cold read with the producer, usually with the producer, across a table, because the producer, of course, sat opposite you, so that they could see you. And then what they did is they took a Polaroid of you. You went in with your 10 by 8 and your resume. They took a Polaroid of you, and that's the classic era when you got cast on Polaroids.
Oh my God.
But they had to do it by memory because it's like there was no taping.
Right, so they've got the Polaroids to refresh their memory on your performance in the room. So I guess you really got to make an impact.
Well, it's a little hard when it's a cold read sitting in a chair in an office. I remember I did have an audition for number 96.
Right.
And I remember, though, because, there was no mobile phones. So I remember I went out for a day and tied one on, to be honest, with four of my mates. And I rang my parents in the morning to say, "Sorry, I didn't make it home last night." And they said, "Your agent rang just after you left. You've got an audition on this morning." I said, "Oh my God." So I went home and had a shower and got ready and went to the place and yes, got a cold read. And there I was sitting in a chair playing chasings on the beach, having not slept for 24 hours.
Oh, mate.
No, there's no silver lining to that story. I didn't get the job. Funny about that. Oh, and the other thing was, and this shows you the evolution of the way taping has come.
Yeah.
What happened is because they were very excited to say, "And we're videotaping this. We've got a videotape. We've got a camera." But what I did is I sat opposite the producer, because that's what you always did. You sat in a chair and the producer was there. And the camera was off to the side. And the reader was off to the other side. And they said, can you favour camera when you deliver your lines? So the person I'm talking to is there, but they want me to talk this way. And the producer was the person, which is where the camera should have been. I've seen taped auditions from its infancy.
That is quite the evolution of the casting process, and from both sides. I mean, first of all, the biggest burning question for me is, do you still try on the fishnets every now and then just to reminisce about Rocky Horror?
I don't know that I can admit that publicly, but sort of, between you and me.
All right.
Once or twice.
Well, in fact, if you were casting a revival today, what's the most important quality you'd look for in a modern Brad or Janet?
Interestingly enough, I did. It's a few years ago now, but I was asked to cast. I think there were 2 or 3 roles that sort of, and I think it was the Gordon Frost organisation, the Rocky Horror Show. I was asked to cast, and I had to cast 3 characters or something like that. One of which was Brad.
Right.
And I got to say, the guys that came in, all triple threats: singer, dancer, actors. Fantastic. I would have never stood a chance. I would, because I was an actor that could hold a tune. I wasn't a kind of, luckily with Brad, I don't think he's supposed to be a kind of a red hot dancer. So therefore I fitted in perfectly. But what you would look for? I mean, so much, and I mean, Rocky Horror is a kind of a good example. So much is visual. And it is that you need to keep in mind, where do you fit visually? What are your strong points? It's kind of like, when I think, let's face it, and I say this to actors various times, go and look at or Google or AI, the great movie character actors who were in small parts in the 70s and 80s. And you'll see faces there that, you don't know their name. You might know one or two of their credits because they were, fabulous in something, but you know exactly the character they play. Because that's the way casting was done back then. It was kind of, it wasn't deeply considered. They didn't do lots of auditions and things like that. What they did it was, dare I say, I think it was the kind of, the support staff, the kind of the admin in the producer's office that made the choices. And so they said, oh, we'll get so-and-so in for the baddie because he's played it before. I know he can do the role.
Do you think your acting perspective influenced the way you treat actors over the years when they've walked into your casting room?
Oh, definitely. I think though that treatment, if you ask any experienced casting director, they'll say the same thing. That treatment is not just in the room, that treatment is in the waiting room. It's like, I'm aging myself to say waiting room and in the room and all that kind of thing, I know. But it's kind of like, it's about relaxing them and making them feel like they're in a comfortable situation from the waiting room. Because, for anybody who's been through that process, and a lot of new actors haven't, I've asked actors, have you met your agent? And so many of them have never been face to face with their agent. I did a post on my Facebook page, and it talked about sort of, what do you miss most about sort of acting in the 70s and 80s? Or what do you miss most about your agent? And everybody would go into their agent weekly because there was no digital transfer of funds. So for you to get paid, it was a check.
Yeah.
And you'd go in, if you were working, you'd have to go in and get your check. But you went into the agency and there was always 2 or 3 actors to chat to. But then when you went to an audition, you sat in the waiting room and there were 6 or 7 or 8 actors that you were always in the room because you were always up for the same roles. There is that kind of engagement. And I think that isolation that sort of has been created by self-taping, I think that isolation is increasing the kind of, mental health, concerns, or kind of, the pressure, the stress that is put upon you. I mean, and it's only put upon you by yourself.
Yeah.
But there is no kind of, collaborative feel. There's no kind of, community feel in the self-taping process, which is a shame.
Yeah, and actors, it's more pressure to have to do more to stay engaged in the industry on every level because it is so much. You're in the room staring at your camera, doing so many more takes you probably don't need to do, but it's in your head.
Well, there you are. You've got no feedback. You've got no kind of, engagement. Sort of, might even have a digital reader, so it's like they're not there to help you. And you go, what do I do now?
This is something that I'm really interested to know because you've been credited with casting some career breakout roles for stars like Russell Crowe, Guy Pearce, and Eric Bana, just to name a few. Is there a common thread or a specific energy you remember seeing in them before they were famous?
I think there's a psychological approach with actors, and it's to do with the whole kind of journey of being an actor, of sort of, of sort of being tested. You are tested. You step in front of a camera for an audition and you feel like you're on show, and you are to a certain extent, but the actor that can transcend that actually gets out there and actually creates a kind of an identity for this character that is unique to them. It's probably an extension of a lot of their own qualities. And it's like, it's that territory. So many actors come in with the kind of the desire to want to please, to want to give them what they want. How many times as an actor came into the room for me and said, just tell me what you want. It's in the, there's a clip There's a clip online of Johnny Drama auditioning for CSI in Entourage. If you haven't seen it, you've got to look it up because all the people in the room, the producer, the director, the casting director, are the actual producer, director, casting director. But he walks in and they just nail what the experience is. There's a waiting room of everybody dressed identically. But he walks into the room and he says, "So, what do you want, guys? Just tell me what you want because I can do this a million different ways." And that's your feeling as an actor. You know what I'm supposed to deliver. So just tell me, and then we both know, and I'll deliver it for you. And that's no that, and it's not that we don't know. I guess we don't know what we don't want. Oh, well, we know what we don't want.
Yep.
It's not that we don't know the character.
Yeah.
The character can be various things. So I think, what I'd sort of love actors to appreciate, understand, is that the kind of the casting process is character evolution. It's kind of, the character is evolving and taking shape in our mind. And then sort of, the actor that you always had envisaged for that role sort of says, "Oh no, I'm not interested," or "I'm not available," and you got to rethink it. So you've got to be open to sort of to go in different territory. I'll tell you the story of casting the feature film The Interview with Hugo Weaving, Tony Martin, and what happened is we auditioned so many people. And we asked Hugo if he would audition, and he said, no, I'm not interested in audition. His agent said, but he's happy to be offered the role. It's like, okay, so he's interested. And after weeks of auditioning, and we just didn't find the person that captured the enigmatic kind of, duplicitous but outwardly trusted soul of that character. And Hugo came in, and it was like new character, new film, new territory. He created a territory. And because let's face it, we think there's a kind of, we go back as actors and we go and do more training to be better. This is what we're trying to do. We're going to be better and better and better. If that was the case, if training was the be-all and end-all, if training was the be-all and end-all to sort of, to booking a role, then why doesn't every NIDA graduate have the same career as Kate Blanchett or Hugo Weaving or kind of, all those people that graduated from NIDA? Therefore, what I'm saying is Hugo and Kate and all that kind of thing and all those other fabulous, fabulous graduates from NIDA, it's like what they've done is they've taken on the techniques, the training, and now, and a bit like I always use the analogy of a sporting star. A sporting star doesn't have to remind themselves of the technical skills required to do a golf swing or do a forehand in tennis or something like that. They just know when they're in the middle of the game. At game time, that technique's there. I don't have to concentrate on it. I don't have to show it. What I have to use is my instinct of what the next moment is in this match, and that's what I'd love actors to sort of, how I'd love them to approach self-tapes, screen tests, auditions, whatever it is. Just allow instinct to be your kind of your flag, your the kind of the thing that drives your choices, your instinct.
That's a great point because I know from my experience sometimes I end up getting in my own head space and thinking, wait a minute, what do they want to see? What do they want? And I start to try and move towards what I think they want rather than listening and trusting my own instinct.
Take kind of inspiration from artists, painting and things like that. And there they are. They're alone. Also, they're doing a self-tape when they go to their studio and they're standing in front of a canvas on an easel. It's just them. And it's the one, and if you look at the kind of the great artists, the kind of great contemporary artists, they're not kind of, creating an identity, creating a kind of a respect by sort of being right, by getting it right, by having that as their goal. It's kind of, impressionist art. Be an impressionist actor. Give us an impression of the character.
So do you think instinct is important when it comes to, like, how do you suggest actors inject life and spontaneity into a take when they are just staring at the lens in their spare bedroom over and over again, getting frustrated perhaps? For
a start, let's look at Robin Williams, Jim Carrey, actors like that, who are, and I mean, I'd say Sam Rockwell. I'm a big fan of Sam Rockwell, for instance. The thing is, in respect of those actors, they're not showing their technique. They're not showing their ability as an actor. they're discovering territory that's totally different and unique. And I think part of the problem is in the audition process. I'm not talking about on set. I'm talking about the audition process.
Yeah.
The audition is when you kind of dissect the character and the character's kind of, what backstory and childhood and upbringing and all that kind of thing. That happens in rehearsal. That happens when you've read the full script. You know who's playing your wife, your brother, your lover, your mother. Okay, you know that kind of territory. And now you can start to use those parameters. But for an audition, it's like you get stuck with a kind of, a solid relationship to the page, as there's a lot of drama training teaches you to do. When you get stuck, having the strongest relationship you have is with the page. Because what do? You get out a highlighter pen and you say, angrily or something like that. Don't get a highlighter pen, get a black texter and black it out. All those actors, or drama teachers that say, what is the character feeling on that line? And then you go, well, they're upset, right upset in the margin. What? You've got a preordained feeling coming up to a moment in this character's life that is in 5 lines' time. And what goes through your head? What goes through your head when you're delivering that audition? It's kind of like you're getting ready to be upset because now you're visualizing the page because you've spent so much time looking at the page. You're not visualizing that character or that relationship or that location, that setting, that community. You're visualizing the page. And what do you see at that moment when you arrive at that moment in your audition? You remember one word, upset, because that's the line, that's the word you wrote in the margin.
Is this what you mean when you often say the script isn't the priority, the character is?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you have all the best intentions, but you just, especially your self-taping, and I'm over analytical anyway, so you just end up getting caught in your head. You have to step back and realize and realign to what the priorities actually are, what you are trying to achieve and how you're trying to get there and what's worked for you in the past.
But it's also, I think, keep in mind when you're doing an audition, keep in mind the audience. And I'm not saying, it's a big important casting director. I'm saying it's people who are looking at your performance and you're the 28th person they've seen who are all the right gender, right age, right look, right, doing the same material again and again and again. Imagine this. Imagine being in a theatre and you're sitting there in the theatre and an actor comes out and stands front centre stage and delivers a scene. And we applaud the actor leaves stage. Next actor comes out, stands in exactly the same spot, exactly the same relationship and eye line to the audience, and delivers exactly the same material. When, as an audience member in that theatre, do you want to go, we're right, mate, we've seen that one. Yeah, you can go now. And so I'm just asking, and this is a lot of the training that I have with actors because it is audition only. I'm just talking about the audition. And I'm talking about the fact of sort of understand the relationship, reverse engineer your audition and sit in the seat of the audience, the casting director, what I call the audition audience. Because it's only going to be seen by 2, 3, 4 people, but each one of those has the ability, the opportunity, the potential to change your career.
Yeah.
But not if you deliver the same that we've just seen or are about to see. Or importantly, the expectation of who you are, the relationship you have with that casting director. They know you always come here, one of the interesting things I get, more so to do with the room, if an actor came in and sort of, a character was angry, how do most actors display anger? Volume. They shut. And so often I have to go out and if you're old enough to have sat in a waiting room and hear the previous actor and they're shouting, you're going, oh my God, I've got to shout. Where do I shout? I shout there and I shout.
It could be so unsettling.
I have to go out to the waiting room and go, guys, don't shout. Don't shout. No shouting, okay? I've seen shouting. I don't need to see any more.
Because it's the context too. I mean, if you're having an argument set in a busy cafe, you can be angry without any volume. You're mindful of your surroundings. You're caught up in conveying what you need to to affect the other character. And yeah, that's really interesting that you point that out.
And so often with writers and scripts, and especially if you're doing, maybe daytime TV, soap opera, the description of the feeling of the character, the emotion of the character, is simplistic, literal, and complete. So it's angry, it's sad, it's kind of, it's words that sort of are really clearly, concisely drawn. Why? Because the script is actually not a document for the actor. It's a document for the producer. Because the writer is writing something to impress a producer who'll say, yeah, let's make this. And you walk out and try and do exactly what's on the page. So what I say to people is, and when you're frustrated by sort of, what can I do with this? If it says the character's angry, go straight to the thesaurus and type angry in and get other words for anger. And now suddenly, and it won't say shout, it is frustrated, perplexed, and that's angry with somebody.
Yeah.
Impatient.
And sometimes it's more real as you try and hide that, and that battle with trying to hide your anger sometimes resonates more than just standing there screaming at someone, or poor reader in this case. You've mentioned in your past that your job is essentially saying no to 80% of people to get to the final.
Did I say that?
Dozen. It might have been a Casting Networks interview, I think. But anyway, I've done my research.
Yes, you have. Yes, I have. Okay. I have said that sometime in the past.
So let's just say that your job is saying no to a lot of people. What's the most common reason an otherwise talented actor gets a no from you?
If the performance, the character you've delivered is predictable, is expected, because as I say, you're in this forum where we're seeing so many people do exactly the same. So if you play the straight and narrow, and if that's the case, and we spoke earlier about, visual casting, because so often the people who are getting those day player roles, those 50-worders, they look like a cop. They look like a doctor or a nurse. It's they look like those things. And so therefore, and if you now deliver the expected, the predictable, now what happens is you get to be Doctor 2. If you're getting a lot of roles or opportunities that is girlfriend, Doctor 2, cop 3, if you're getting those unidentified roles, that means you are being a kind of, part of the scenery, part of the community, not driving the story, not driving the relationships. It's about, and dare I say, it's the same journey that casting directors have been on and are on. Meaning, 30 years ago, a doctor was a white Anglo-Saxon male in their 40s, full head of hair, glasses, that was a doctor.
Yeah.
And, nothing else was going to sort of be a doctor. Can you imagine if I presented a tape for a doctor and it was full of white Anglo-Saxon males in their 40s? I'd never work again. So what we are doing as casting directors is we are saying, how else can I kind of, capture a doctor, even if it is that kind of, that day player, Doctor 3 kind of thing. It's still a case of sort of, I need to create separate identities for this community, for these different characters. I remember in casting Romper Stomper, they came to me with 3 or 4 of the gang in place. And I said to Jeffrey, Jeffrey Wright, the director, I said, with this gang, they're all around about, including Russell Crowe and Daniel Pollock and Dan Wiley, they're all really actors, all the same age. And I've got a feeling that sort of once we shave their head and turn them into skinheads, they're all going to look the same. So now the approach of the casting director is, I said, we need to get some fat guys in there. We need to get some tall guys in there, some short guys. We need to sort of play with the kind of the visual statement of the community.
Certainly make it more realistic, and it definitely worked in that case. Romper Stomper was amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, that film was the film I had the most knockbacks on.
Really?
People would read it and
the
go,
subject matter?
No, don't want to be part of it.
Yeah.
I must admit, I had a producer, an American producer, saying, so how would you describe your career? How would you describe your work? What sort of projects do you do? And I said, I don't know, I'd never been asked that, never considered it. And I said, testosterone. If the film or the characters have got testosterone, then I'm your man. I did get a meeting for a very big film as a result of that. I blew the meeting, but it's kind of like, so romper stomper chopper,
Yeah.
those kinds of things that are kind of in your face. So and I think so. I'll be kind of circumspect here, and I think that's to do with me sort of seeking reality,
Right.
seeking reality in the characters, in the performances. And so, therefore, when you combine a kind of, a socially kind of, aggressive part of the community, and you make their performances real, then it's got impact.
Yeah.
It's got impact.
Yeah. I think that's it. The more relatable, well, and that, the more real it looks, that's it. The more impactful it's going to be on the audience.
Yeah.
People often see casting directors as gatekeepers, but you've described the role as a bridge between the director, producer, and the artist. And look, it's important to me because I'm busy trying to develop TV shows as a producer. In fact, when this episode is released, I would have just returned from Screen Forever. So good luck to future Max. But can you talk to some of the challenges you face from the production side that the actors might not even appreciate, might not even know about?
The big change, I remember for Proof, which Russell Crowe won his first AFI award for, and Hugo Weaving. And interestingly enough, sorry, now I'm going to digress. Proof actually, it came to me with a different producer, same writer-director, but with a different producer 12 months earlier, then came back to me with a new producer, and we had a cast in place for the original film. And the two roles we changed, we kept Genevieve Pico as the female, but the two roles we changed were Hugo Weaving and the Russell Crowe role. We changed the actors in those roles.
Wow.
From the original choices, who were on hold, but now we're making a different sort of film. The point is sort of when we cast Proof, when we cast Romper Stomp, all those films.
Yeah.
What happened was the producer and director and myself, the casting director, would sit there in a room and make a choice, and that was the choice. That's who's doing the role. You would hope and think that kind of, that's how it works, that the creative team, the creative kind of heart of the film they are the ones that sort of have the major say. No. And the problem is these days, is that sort of, it's how many producer credits do we see on shows now?
Yes. Executive producers. Oh my God. It's a long list.
It's a long list, but it's producer after producer after producer because the project went through their hands at some time, and when it then goes, it goes up the tree. So you write a script, you go there to sort of, try and sort of, get people on board, and a kind of a production company comes on and says, "Oh, Max, this is great, fantastic, we're going to do this," but you've just inherited two new producers who, and their contract gives them a front of film credit. And also usually, even if all they are is a financier and they're good at spreadsheets, it gives them consultation and cast. So and I describe that as casting by committee.
Yep.
So therefore, and it only takes, I was speaking to a friend of mine who's a kind of a producer, and, when he's meeting people and sort of discussing ideas, he produces reality. But when he's discussing ideas, it only takes one person, and he's meeting, 6-8 people. It only takes one person to say, "Oh, no, I don't like that idea." Off the table, gone. How does that impact an actor in terms of casting by committee? It only takes one person to, "Oh, no, I don't like him." They're off the list.
Yeah.
And so I've described that process, that result, as that instead of getting the best actor for the role, and I don't mean best as in the best actor, but the best choice for that character, what we get is the least worst, the one that has the least number of criticisms,
Right.
the least number of objections.
Right.
I'm just lucky that I've actually, because I started at the ABC as the casting director, where the producers and directors did get choice, and then then went freelance, and filmmakers got their choice.
Yeah.
But lately, it's kind of, it's getting worse and worse.
From my perspective, it does seem that it's getting more complicated, where you've got more co-productions to be able to get the funding to make what they want properly. And then you've got different regions in that. It might be Ireland and their film commission, and Australia and Screen Australia, and everyone's wants a certain piece of it, and there's just so much involved from that, and so many more decision makers are suddenly invited to the party, and it can just add layers of complexity to get the right funding, and then and you got film stars or film actors moving into television a lot more, and not leaving a lot of space for other TV actors. Certainly not, by the time you're coming up for a guestie or a 50-worder, you're competing with people who bring an audience with them almost. There's just so much complexity to it now. It just feels like it's a bigger world from the production side, with so many more committees involved.
Yeah. Let me go back to the analogy of an artist in their studio with a canvas and an easel. It's like, they are the ultimate creative contributor to that canvas.
Yeah.
And that, so I think they've survived this kind of whole committee, but I think as actors or kind of, in production, especially in big production, there's no end of the number of suits that get a say. And yes, when you start talking co-productions, it's kind of like, I think they actually have a formula. It's kind of like, okay, Ireland gets 20% and the UK gets X. And so therefore it goes down to, so that role will be cast from Ireland. That role will be...
Yeah, it's it can get complicated very quickly.
Well, it's kind of formulaic.
Yeah.
It's kind of, the creativity, the kind of the instinct of the filmmaker has kind of been, the poor director is the kind of, the last one to know, to have a creative say.
Yeah, or in television, the director of episode 2 or the director of episode 3 or... It's difficult.
They get no say.
You're a cog in the wheel. Yeah, that's challenging. Yeah. That's challenging. I think it's really delving more into the business side has certainly been something that I've loved doing, and it's been a lot more eye-opening. Is that something you'd recommend to help actors in their development? Just be more engaged in the industry at different levels and be aware of what's going on.
I'm talking about the actor as an autonomous, creative individual. And that's what I'd like to encourage and empower the actors to do. And the first thing to do is to do a simple online editing course. I don't know, I can't edit myself, so I assume there's a simple one. The point being, and it's just for your demo reel. It's just for, look at all those people on social media who've taken, who create a kind of a character and create an event, or in fact, create a 3-character scene and they play each character. And I'm just saying that's an exercise. What they've done is they've become a producer. They've produced, and that's what you are as a self-taper.
Yeah.
Because you have to do everything: lighting, sound, camera, costume, etc., etc., etc. So, what should an actor? What is it? And a number of the people that I've worked with, because you can see that sort of I want to give actors the power to take ownership. And a number of people have gone off and made sort of, web series, vertical dramas. If you haven't interviewed Cam Fall, I'd suggest, perhaps he's someone to speak to.
Okay.
Cam Fall is somebody I've known a long time, but sort of did the course and then made a kind of, started with a stage play, Swipe Right. But anyway, he put it on there as a play, and it went so well that what he did was he then said, okay, let's take that and make that a web series. And created a comedy web series where he was the writer and the producer, and he played 10, 15 different characters. He just played, which is what the essence of the play was about, and ended up being nominated for the Toronto Film Festival or something like that. I don't know which festival, but a Canadian Film Festival for Best Online Comedy Online Series. That's an actor who is saying that it's the industry I'm in love with.
Yeah.
I'm not in love with standing in front of a camera and sort of having pins stuck in me and kind of all of that kind of thing. I'm not in love with the process of acting. I'm in love with the process of creating.
Yeah.
Creating characters. And there is a food chain that creates characters. It's like, and everybody attributes the kind of the character to the writer. I don't know, the writer's the right person to own the character. I think letting the writer own the character is kind of the wrong thing. I think the writer owns the plot. I think the writer owns the story. The actor owns the character. And if you start from, and you said, how does an actor approach it? If you say you own the character, now you can create whatever you like. I did a film in LA. I was going to shoot in Mexico. So I was flown over to LA and spent 4 weeks casting in LA. Wonderful experience. But we auditioned Damian Lewis. This was back before he did Homeland.
Right.
And sort of, so he chatted with the director and sort of, this is what, it was a scene set at a campsite. And of course, so here's the camera and there's the stage. And it's like so often I have actors, they'll come in and they'll sort of see there's a line on the floor where the lighting and sound is best, and they'll walk in and they'll put their toes on that spot because they know that's their duty, that's their responsibility, stand on the mark. What he did for this campsite was he headed to the far corner of the room and leant up against the back wall because he figured that's the way the relationship he'd have with that community, with that setting. That's the physical relationship he would have. That's his starting point.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, okay, he's going for a major role, so somebody's on camera and they're going to follow him, but it's that thinking.
Yeah.
It's that freedom. And so many actors don't understand you have freedom.
Yeah.
You don't know that there's room to move. And hey, you can cite all the examples of casting directors who say, "What are you doing? You're not standing on the mark. What are you doing? You're not facing the reader. What are you doing? You don't have a plain background." And those casting directors aren't really casting directors.
Yeah.
Okay? They're traffic cops.
Mm-hmm.
They direct traffic. Okay? And I'm not even going to mention names but we've all had that experience that we feel like we are there and being subjugated to what they want. And that sits in the back of our mind that every casting director is like that.
Yeah.
Not the special ones.
So don't be too safe. Don't be too obedient and just follow the script, but make sure you own that character and help create that character.
It's not just owning the character, it's owning the space.
Yeah.
And the space, and, I'm following my own advice, but there'll be times where I actually sort of come right in and sort of talk to you, and I'm doing that because it's like I'm giving myself the freedom,
mm-hmm.
the ownership of the frame. And in fact, so here's the mark.
Yep.
I'm standing in a medium close-up.
Yep.
Okay? And what we do, and we feel we can't move off that mark. It's almost like, and you can see it, you ask about experienced actors. If you do an audition where you don't move your feet, you've got to move your feet. Because it's almost like your feet are staple gunned to the floor because you're standing on the mark. What I want you to understand is there's real estate in that space
mm-hmm.
between the mark and the back wall. There's also audition real estate between the mark and the camera. And each one of those, that freedom that you take allows you to create a different status, a different power of the character. But until you understand that you have that freedom, you'll never know to take it.
That's right. It's like we see that line, we see the tape, and we go for it. We love direction.
Right. I was casting for so long. We had offices just inside the gates at Fox Studios, and I think over the years, we replaced the tape about 6 times because it just got so worn out. After a while, I went, no, I quite like it being so worn. And
I can relate to that. It's just too easy to fall into a routine, and you just can't afford to do that as an artist. You need to keep it fresh. And
that's right.
On the other side of it, when you're watching the tapes, especially now with all the self tapes, of course, how long does it actually take for you to know if an actor's right? Or what can they do in those first 10 seconds to really make Greg Apps lean in and pay attention?
He says leaning in. I think the thing to understand is and you've just asked the question, how do we know what to do to show that we're right for that role? That's not the goal.
Yeah.
The goal is to be remembered. The goal is does an artist stand in front of a canvas and paint something and go, wow, great, I can sell that for $5,000? That's not the goal. The goal is I've done something that feeds my creative soul, pleases me creatively, but more important, makes a statement about who I am and what my work is that actually speaks to people in a general sense. How does that apply to auditions? The goal is to be remembered. The goal is to be remembered, not to book the job. And if you actually go, okay, I need to be remembered, because it's like if you walk in and, and do everything wrong, it's like, because what we're looking at when we look at the tape, sure, we've got this in our mind eye of sort of, what we're looking for to cast the role. But somebody comes in and does something really different, an individual, and it's like, then we note that. That's in our mind's eye. Well, let's face it, we've all got that.
Yeah.
We've all got that impression.
Yeah.
It's like, I've from a long time ago, I started quoting the story of sort of you're at a dinner party and there's this dickhead knob in a loud sort of Hawaiian shirt and sort of, just kind of an arrogant, narcissistic, and you look at photographs of that night and bang, you go straight back to knob. You go straight back to that feeling.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not a bad thing because if I'm auditioning for something, if I'm casting for something and I need a knob, he's the first person that comes to mind.
100%.
So he went to that dinner party to be remembered.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm asking, that's what I'm empowering actors to do, is to sort of, to find the identities. Because it's not like, oh, what's my brand, thinking it's kind of, this little box that you sit in. No. It's kind of, what sort of cop would you create? What sort of bureaucrat would you create? What kind of businessman would you create? Think of the kind of character that Matthew McConaughey created for Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
One scene, but it would have been, hey, Matthew, do you want to, or he would have read the script and gone, I want to play that role. And of course you've got it. And he also says, and I want to do what I want to do. And you go, you got that too. It's like, but he took ownership.
Yeah.
And that's the thinking that you have to do. You have to sort of, find the territory of that character, that version of the character that makes you stand out. I had one of our graduates say that he was auditioned for one of those 50-word or those small day player roles for a CIA guy. Mm-hmm. And he auditioned, and of course, the CIA guy's glasses, suit, slicked hair, all that kind of thing, severe. He played him bumbling. Imagine a kind of a CIA agent being cast as bumbling, and the answer is it wouldn't happen. But what did happen was he got a phone call straight away saying, please audition for this role. Because what he did was he left a memory. He cut through. He was memorable. And now he gets an opportunity to a bigger role because we've seen a different side of him. Whereas if he just went in there to deliver CIA guy, like the 40 other people we're seeing, he would have blended in.
That's the problem. Sometimes actors see the role, they don't see the person, and they'll go in playing a cop, but this is a real person whose job just happens to be as a police officer. You know, you have to take it a step back and remember that there's a person, there's a real character in there. Let's get into it.
Yeah. Another analogy I use, imagine 12 art students and they all go to, you're in Sydney, so I can say this, but imagine they go to Lady Macquarie's chair and we say, paint the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. Okay? 12 different students, all given the same subject matter, like actors being given the same script.
Yeah.
Who stands out? The one that sort of creates an individuality, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not the one that gets the Harbour Bridge exactly right and gets the right number of rivets or the right, it's, here we are back at Impressionist art.
Now, in addition to...
I am a little bit counterintuitive. I do kind of, and anybody listening can shoot me down in flames and say, oh, so many casting directors disagree with you. Yep. That's my hope.
In addition to working as a casting director, you also run the Audition Technique. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a business where you can offer courses to help actors in their development, even one-on-one coaching.
Yes. It's a website that is, and it is purely because my experience and my understanding is not with script analysis or kind of, or writer intent, character intent and all that kind of thing. My whole journey, my whole career is all about, there is a character who sits in this box. And if you stand on the mark, and face the person you're talking to and deliver the lines in a really well way, and you're loud on the angry parts, okay, that's predictable. That's expected. What I'm trying to do is to empower actors to sort of, look outside think outside the square, think outside the kind of the journey, the process. Don't, because as I say, it's this relationship with the page that you think the page has all the answers. No, it only has opportunities, but you've got to take them.
That's really interesting. I think it's a way to move from being trying to be just a better actor to really being a smarter one. And I think, yeah, the audition technique just, it really helps appreciate the business side of it, the casting director side of it, of course, but also, yeah, how to be a smarter actor.
Everything I know about auditioning,
Yeah.
I've learnt from sort of, watching an actor in the room or watching a self-tape and go, how did you do that? What did you do that made me pay attention? How did you capture that? And that's my audition handbook is from all actors that I've seen. Because I mean, I've been auditioning since 1982. I started at the ABC.
Right.
So I've seen a few.
A little bonus question, if you like, and you don't have to answer, but is there an actor that you passed on early in their career who went on to become like a big star, massive star, and proving that, even a casting legend can be surprised?
Oh, look, it all comes down to getting the kind of the right combination of things. I mean, who could possibly predict that Kate Blanchett, there she is graduating from NIDA, like all the other actors, we'd say, wow, what a great actor. And yeah, let's cast her as a lead. But who could possibly predict that she'd have a career that is every actor's dream? She gets to play all sorts of roles. And this is the thinking also that I want actors to do, because for me, self-taping is self-taping. When you self-tape, you're being tested. When you're auditioning, you're being tested. What sort of pressures? Because you got to get it. Well, your first goal is to get it right, which is the wrong goal, but you've got to get it kind of, got to make sure that I get it. And what's the first thing that goes through your mind when you get a self-tape audition request? The deadline.
Yep.
I've got to upload by Friday at 4:00. Your whole life is geared around Friday, 4:00. Does your creativity flow between now and Friday, 4:00? Or do you need something else? But the thing is, it's like, could we predict that Kate Blanchett would have that kind of career? And that kind of career is driven by her experience of choosing characters, heading in a direction, wanting to curate a career. And using self-tapes, an actor can curate the kind of the character library, the character kind of, types, the kind of the character brands that they create, because it's your creative space. It's your art studio. It's your, I mean, where does a writer go to create? Right here, right in front of a keyboard.
So in a way, self-taping is given actors a bit more power to help create those different characters.
Yeah. So many actors don't see it, but that's what it's done.
Well, thank you for your time today, Greg, and I and all the actors listening really appreciate your advice. So
Pleasure.
Thank you very much. Don't forget to follow and download and listen to more episodes. I'm Max Belmonte, and this is Two Unemployed Actors.
Two unemployed actors.